Festive greetings, our legion of elves and reindeer. Welcome to Podcast of Storm, where socially awkward snowmen, crazy stalking stuffers, and all around naughty list members convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Jolly Holly Bookworm, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone.
And I am your host, Santa Claus Burglar, the brains from pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing mostly okay.
Yeah, that is the last time. Okay, I really gotta look at those videos because I thought it was just gonna be the standard Feliz Navidad. I did not think it was gonna be like a dubstep thing.
Someday we'll get this whole professionalism thing taken care of, folks, but it sure as fuck won't be today.
Yeah. So it's kind of gonna be well. For one thing, hope you guys' Christmas was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was pretty good. You know, got some nice dinner. With my family. Got some cool stuff. Got some really cool like statues.
Which I guess I guess Martin and I were kind of thinking the same thing because my initial plan was
Hey, Dalton.
fuck, I did it again. But
Yeah.
I guess we were thinking kind of around the same lines because I initially planned to get you a statue, but the problem being my financial resources is not great this year. So yeah.
Speaking of which, I did get Dalton a couple gifts. Usually I try to do one at least, but no, I got him two things this year.
Yes, this triquetra necklace here, and new hat. I am sort of annoyed that all the top hats I have are black. I really need to start diversifying the colors so I actually have ones that I can wear with different colors of outfit.
I mean, to be fair, no,
black is just a little bit basic.
I mean, to be fair, it has that nice little feather on it.
It does, just like my other fancier one used to before I lost the feather.
All right. And for the record, I was actually trying to look for like a Morgan symbol or the Mav symbol necklace.
Mab, to the best of my knowledge, does not have a symbol explicitly ascribed to her. As for the Morgan, I don't know.
Yeah,
One
I
assumes probably Ravens would be hers because
yeah,
she's considered the Raven goddess.
like legitimately, I could not find anything on Amazon,
Hmm.
so I figured that was the next best thing.
Yeah, the Triquiter's fine. Even though part of me does like internally cringe because the first thing I can think of when I see it is Charmed. Yeah, Charmed really freaking ruined that symbol for like a decade.
It was either this or get you a cane or something, like a nice cane.
I mean, I do have a collection of walking sticks, so that might have worked,
Maybe
but
something.
they're also pricier. So I'm kind of glad you didn't, because I don't. I feel guilty at the idea of you breaking the bank.
It's really no problem, man.
I know, but still. And your stuff is in fucking transit as soon as Amazon gets their fucking shit together.
Oh, hey, Giant Turtle, good to see you. You're early. You know, for you. I'm doing fine. How was your Christmas, man? To be fair, I was looking through a lot of different stuff to get you. Like, I I found something. Not gonna say what it is because I might actually get that for you some other time. But
Mhm.
it was a little too pricey.
Yeah, it's fine.
Um,
Like I said, I had a couple of things that I wanted to get you, but they were outside of my price range this year.
Again, you're good on.
I did manage to find you two things, and as soon as Amazon gets their shit together, those two things will be heading your way. But it's the when Amazon gets their shit together part of the conversation that's the important bit.
Oh, and just FYI, and I'm not like I don't like sharing like the superhero stuff we're working on together, but this one is just like my own personal project. I'm fine talking about this one briefly because Dawn has helped me out a little bit on it with like developing the lore. I'm still working on it, but I have made some major strides in working on a dystopian cyberpunk mech story. Now, saying that out loud, it sounds like super 2000s edgy boy anime obsessed schlock. I
Yeah,
won't lie.
Attack on Titan and Gundam intensify. Lol.
Does Attack on Titan count as mecha? Or
Don't they fight them with giant robots from time to time? I've
no,
never
they're
watched Attack on Titan, and I have no interest in it whatsoever. So, eh.
uh now they turn they're like now they turn into like Titans too.
Well,
It's a
yeah, I knew about that part. I just wondered if humanity fought them with mechs.
no.
Okay, that seems like a creative missed opportunity, but again, I have no interest in watching Attack on Titan, and I never will. So, whatever.
Anyway, so yeah, we kind of have a short list here. We just have like four things.
Hmm.
This was an article we didn't cover the last week.
Hmm.
This is from I'm gonna butcher this. SuelandProud.com. It's published December 10th, 2023, and written by Christia Swanson. Yule, Saturnalia, and how the solstice shaped modern Christmas traditions.
Hmm.
And if anyone is wondering, Dawn obviously sent this.
Yeah.
Christmas trees, holly, mistletoe, and cider are staples of the holidays, but these traditional parts of our holiday celebrations predate Christmas by several hundred years. I'm gonna guess long.
1,000, but never mind.
2023, the winter solstice, the longest night of the year and the official start of the winter season, falls on the 21st. Sorry. Many solstice celebrations became incorporated into Christmas celebrations over centuries as Christianity spread across Europe and cultures mixed together.
I mean, that's. I'm not sure if it's the oversimplification that's bothering me, or the like preschool level softening of that exchange, because the Christianized Romans didn't exactly give anyone a choice, and nor did the polytheistic cultures they tried to convert have nothing to say on the matter. That's why it took forever. It's why the Scottish still have several hundred generations of chips on their shoulder about every given thing under the sun. Because the Christianized Romans told the polytheistic Romans, as well as all the other vassal states of Rome at the time, to convert, and the polytheistic cultures went, fuck you, no, until the church eventually smartened enough to go, okay, so we're gonna let you keep celebrating your thing. We're just gonna change the dogmatic reasons why you do for paperwork reasons.
Uh,
And yeah.
uh, um,
Anyway,
Giant
moving
Troll,
on.
Giant Troll says humanity isn't nearly that technologically advanced in Attack on Titan to make giant robots. Humanity mostly fights Titans with super grappling hooks to Spider-Man around and swords to stab at weak points, plus more, but that's spoilers, so not sure if I should say.
Okay, this I didn't know. It's Attack on Titan in concept sounded very much like it would lend itself well to Pacific Rim style mechs. If you want to fight a giant fuck off creature, then it helps to have a giant fuck off siege weapon with which to do so. Anyway, moving on.
The U.S. Forest Service has a helpful breakdown of several plants we associate with Christmas and the traditions behind them. The most prominent being the Christmas tree or Yule tree. Evergreens. Sorry, hold on. Evergreens were part of the Roman celebration of Saturnalia, and tree worship was a part of Scandinavian culture. Even after their conversion to Christianity, the tradition stayed, bringing an evergreen tree into your home during the solstice to scare away the devil.
Was that really one of the church's rebrandings for that? Because how and why exactly would the devil be afraid of trees? I mean, I'm not expecting religiously tinged propaganda to make entire levels of sense, but at least there's usually like an internal logical system in place here. But in any case, also nitpicking like a motherfucker here, but when don't I? You forgot the Celts' existence again, and that bothers me when people just arbitrarily forget that the Celts were a thing. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, Giant Turtle, why are vampires afraid of garlic? Or silver for demons? Well, I think silver kind of related to iron, right?
Well, it's related. It's related to how spirit negative spiritual energies interact with silver and iron, respectively. As for garlic, garlic was thought to have purification properties, which then would essentially would essentially acidically burn away the impurities of any negative spiritual entity. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
All right. In fifteen in the 1500s, Germany. In 1500s Germany, the tradition of adding candles, apples, and cookies became popular with Lutherans. Tradition didn't spread to England until Queen Victoria married Prince Albert of Germany when the decorations became more elaborate.
Uh-huh. Again, this is somewhat preschool level oversimplified, but I digress.
Tree worship didn't stop at the tree. Some areas still incorporate a Yule log into their celebrations, although in modern times a popular version is a cake in the shape of a log decorated with leaves. The Yule log was often the largest log you could find, burned in the fireplace to protect from evil spirits through the longest night of the year.
Eh,
Orthodox Christian traditions still incorporate burning a Yule log in some regions. The confectionery versions has been featured on famous cooking shows like The Pioneer Woman.
Okay, but again, I realize I'm being overly pedantic, but it's my prerogative to be overly pedantic, so fuck you. The Yule log wasn't just a protective measure; they were also a streamlining of the concept of a sacrificial fire. You would burn things for the sake of the gods or the fae, or insert spiritual entity here. The same fire that ostensibly protected you also was handy for sacrificial reasons. Anyway, moving on.
Alright. A popular tradition that also stayed with Scandinavian influence is kissing under the mistletoe. In Celtic Druid traditions, it has also had a connection with fertility because it will grow even in the cold of winter. In Norse mythology, the goddess Frigg declared it as a symbol of love and said she would kiss anyone who walked underneath it after Loki kills her son Balder with a spear tipped in a poison made from mistletoe.
See, this is where I'm confused as to where this writer is getting off, because those two traditions sort of clash with one another, I should think. The idea of mistletoe being so deadly that it can kill a god who literally everything else in existence had sworn not to kill, and then being a symbol of love. Although, in fairness, this might be one of those traditions that doesn't conflate Frigg and Freya, which, again, wait, that doesn't even work in this case, because the author themselves just made the conflation between Frigg and Freya. So, what in the hell? Or I guess in this case, what in the hell with one L? But, eh. Moving on.
Okay. Sorry. Fuck. I don't know why I'm tired. Can't get enough sleep. What the fuck?
Did you work today?
No.
Okay, that's weird. Moving on.
Alright. According to historian Mark Forsyth, the modern tradition began in England between 1720 and 1784. The practice became more common in the 1800s when historians believe it was thought to be bad luck if you didn't accept the kiss.
I'm gonna have to pull a Christy Winters and go citation needed, because I'm not sure from whence you're citing that. Moving on, though.
Okay. Romans also used to have. Oh, wait. Holly was also believed to have the ability to increase fertility due to its vibrant green and red color in the winter. Romans also used holly to decorate during the Saturnalia festival. It is also believed to protect the home and bring good luck. That tradition continued as Christians hung it on doors to protect from evil spirits during the holy days. It's such a popular Christmas decoration. It has inspired famous songs such as Frank Sinatra's Mistletoe and Holly.
Okay, but again, I'm not sure whether it's the writer of the article being biased or just not doing the research well. But the reason why holly is associated with the winter and therefore by extension with solstice festivals is because in Druidic or would it be cosmology? I guess it would be cosmology. In the Druidic tradition, there were two plants that were believed to be the most sacred. One of them being the oak, which was the symbol of summer, and the other being holly, which was the symbol of winter. And the respective rulers of said seasons, the Oak King and the Holly King, were considered to be two of the most powerful primordial deities within Celtic cosmology. So yes, while there were some protective aspects to it, it was also fundamentally of winter by its very nature. Because again, Celts. Which again leads me back to the don't freaking ignore the existence of the Celts, because this makes faux pas like this happen. Anyway, moving
on. Cider may date back to the Celts in Britain around 3000 BCE. They would visit an orchard, sing to the trees, and drink from a communal wassail bowl to encourage a good harvest next year. It was a drink in Rome, Greece, and the Middle East, and a popular favorite in Norman culture. Some areas still practice this tradition today.
Okay, again, I'm not sure where these facts are being cited from, but they're either incomplete or just very foreign to my own vectors of research. Anyway, moving along.
Okay. Saint Lucia's Day, honoring the Christian martyr, also incorporates the Norse solstice tradition of lighting bonfires to warn off spirits during the longest night.
They only were part protective measure. They were also honoring measures. God damn it. Stop leaving out half of the story. It's important to maintain the whole goddamn thing. Moving on.
That's it.
Okay. And now on to the thing that's probably going to take up the most of tonight's episode.
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Because in addition to making us imbibe the Depresso Espresso earlier in the month, Leon also has baffling opinions on Home Alone, which we shall get into in our
Well, I
turn.
thought we were going to do the Santa Claus thing and then do the video.
Don't we usually end with a positive thing?
I mean, that's supposed to be the that video I was going to do last week before I got super tired.
Oh, okay.
I thought,
I forgot we still had the Santa Claus archetypes to do.
Yeah, just give me 1 sec to pull up a photo.
Mm-hmm. You can go first if you want to.
Yeah, let me get the list real quick. Okay. Like I said, I'm just pulling up a picture real quick. But yeah, so Don and I had this discussion pretty early on in the month, because we haven't done a top. Well, this is a top 3 list, but a list that we usually do during these months.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were thinking, because I mean, last year we did our top 5 favorite Santa Clauses. Um,
Hmm.
so I figured we just do like our top 3 favorite archetypes of Santa Claus,
Hmm.
or like all encompassing, not really like specifics.
Hmm.
Okay, there we go. You can guess what it is if you want the photo. Are you stumped?
Yeah, I have no idea where that's from.
Oh, you uncultured motherfucker. It's from Friday After Next.
I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
Okay, have you heard of the Friday movies?
No.
Right. I forgot who I'm talking to. The Roll Huck Wizard. It's very okay. Yeah, Santa Crime, Giant Turtle. It was a okay. It has Ice Cube. It's very like it's a black comedy kind of movie deal. Um. Anyway, it's funny. I thought it was a funny little piece there. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I'll start. Like my top my we're going descending, right? Not ascending.
Yes.
Okay, so my third would be like a horror Santa. Because a lot of people have done like Christmas movies with like horror movies set at Christmas, which I mean, yeah, it kind of works. Um, I know there are a bunch, but the one that always kind of like pops in my head is the Krampus movie from what was it, 2015?
Yes.
Uh,
Michael Dougherty is Krampus.
right, which I realize isn't Santa per se. I mean, they gave the iconography of Santa more so to Krampus in that with the dark edge.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's just an interesting juxtaposition, given the holly jolly cheer that is, Santa with
Another famous example would be Santa Sleighs.
right, yeah, right. I don't know why that one skipped my mind for a minute there. Thank you.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, Santa Slays is about Santa, who is actually a demon who got tricked by an angel
Yeah.
to be
Long story short, in that universe, Santa is the Antichrist. He lost a bet with an angel, and as part of the bet, or as part of losing the bet, he had to spend 1,000 years bringing joy to people on Christmas Eve, as per Santa lore. And in the course of the movie, the contract is up, and now he's allowed to be the Antichrist again.
Mhm. Um, yeah, it's just like I always think it's just an interesting uh just play with like again like the colors, the whimsy, the almost childlike wonder, and then have like that visceral like kind of scary aspect thrown into it.
Hmm.
Um, that's pretty much all I have for that.
Hmm.
Don?
Yeah. My first one is the god or fairy in disguise.
No, it's a seasonal avatar.
I forgot what order I put him in. But yeah, another of my favorites is the seasonal avatar, where essentially Santa is like Christmas spirit incarnate. Another example of this might be, although in kind of a loose way, the version of him from the Fairly Odd Parents Christmas special, Christmas Every Day, or
For the record, Miss Claus could get it. Just saying.
well, that's
I put it on a list like a couple years back. All right.
that doesn't actually surprise me, but I had forgotten that you had put that. I forgot that you put her on a list.
Well, okay, they shouldn't have made her that hot though.
It was the 90s, man.
No, I'm pretty sure it was in the 2000s that thing
No,
came
it
out.
was 99.
Hold on. Hold on. So, it's called Christmas Every Day, right?
Yes. That is the episode title.
All right, hold on. I thought it was just a song. Okay, give me a break. It's been a while. It's been years since I. Yes, apparently there's a song in a movie from 1996 called Christmas Every Day.
I wonder if that was an inspiration or if it was just a coincidence.
Oh wow, it came out. Okay, that's interesting. It was in the first season.
Yes.
2001.
You can tell from the animation style.
Hold on. I'm looking at December 9th, 2001.
Huh. I could have sworn it was older than that.
Okay, General, I'm going to assume you haven't watched it, that special. So I know you're making fun of me, but I am right. Okay? To be fair, I do find it interesting. It makes me curious to learn more about it. I wish they could have gone, about the.
They kind of abandoned the idea of it in a couple of years later when they did that stupid Wishmas episode. God, I hate that episode so much. They should have just left well enough alone.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, she's hot, man. To be fair, there were a lot. I don't know why Butch Hartman always designed a lot of. Okay, let's be honest. Tooth Fairy from Fairly Odd Parents. That was fucking weird. How hot she was.
Again, it was the 90s. It wasn't uncommon for female characters to be sexy.
I'm just
It
saying.
wasn't uncommon for anyone to be sexy. See also Jordan von Strangle.
Look, I'm just saying. Of course, she'd be drilling over that motherfucker. I'm just saying. They put her in basically a one-piece bathing suit.
They did?
She's taller than all the other fairies. I'm just.
Yes. Which makes me, like, logistically wonder about the question, does, like, the size of the fairy in question, like, denote power scaling?
Well, to be fair...
Because both Jordan and the Tooth Fairy are both larger than the other fairies.
Well, no, they can always... I mean, they can shapeshift. That's been shown.
Right, but every time we see a more human-sized fairy in the Fairly Odd Parents, it's supposed to denote how powerful they are. I think the only exception is Cupid.
Yeah.
Because the April Fool, the same principle applies to. He's almost the size of a normal human. And he is, of course, the April Fool. Etc. Yeah, I think the only reason Cupid that doesn't apply to Cupid is because Cupid is supposed to be a baby per his like marketing ethos.
All right. Anything else? for seasonal Avatar Santa, or
No.
I guess moving to my number two, it's the bitter grizzled Santa. No, I actually wait. No, it wasn't. No, I crossed that out. It was.
I
Uh,
I thought you put badass Santa next.
no, that was number one. My second one, it was generational Santa. You know that where they kind of okay. You know where like it's a family bloodline that's gone through generations of being Santa and stuff.
So like Arthur Christmas then.
It's the best representation of it. Yeah. I guess the Santa Claus, you know, with the E, kind of works too.
Right, but there it's not familial so much as it is
Contractual.
mantle wise, which
Yeah. Okay. But my point.
I think I put I think I put the passing of the mantle on my list at one point, didn't I?
Yeah, it's number one. But getting back to my generational thing, I think it's interesting. For one thing, it adds a lot more character to this kind of more mythical being that is Santa. Um, you know, he's not the first to do it, and I will say if it doesn't handle the magic thing, you know, some movies have done the generational thing, but make it not magical at all, which sucks. I think, in my opinion. But I think it's just again, it adds a lot more interesting character wise to like the history of Santa. And like you give him a family and stuff, and like this legacy that the character has to uphold and all that. And it also just makes you think how everyone through that bloodline, like even to the first, how they interpreted, how they evolved, how they carried that title, you know? And again, yeah, Arthur Christmas is like the best representation of it. It's also a really great and underrated Christmas movie. Can we agree on that? Like,
yeah, I don't know why Arthur Christmas hasn't gotten a bigger rep over the years because it's really good.
Believe it or not, back when this was a thing, I actually had the DVD for it.
I think we still do somewhere. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Or did we not have it physically? I remember finding it on streaming a couple of times, but I don't know if we have it physically or not. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. No, I don't. I don't really have anything else for generational Santa. All right, you're number two with the God Fairy in Disguise, Santa.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites, where Santa as an entity has gone through the process of like developing different guises and forms and things because of the like changing nature of belief, or just, you know, to fit in better with whatever the standard model of him is supposed to be. Sometimes it's Gwyneth Nuth, sometimes it's Odin. Actually, a lot of the time it's Odin.
Sorry, I was just thinking of a point. In a recent DC comic, Batman teams up with Santa Claus. I can't remember the full story. It's like it's been relatively recent. I think it just came out this month. I haven't looked into it, but the wife of Santa is an elf, and she takes on different appearances depending on who's like who she's around. But it showed her real form at one point on the comic page, which was super interesting. Just kind of lead credence to your thing. Although I think, sorry.
A similar archetype that's somewhat close to this is when he's elf or fairy powered. Like if he, like there are times when Santa is a normal human, but he for whatever reason is chosen by elves or fairies to essentially be their representative. Jackie Chan Adventures kind of did it that way, where Santa
Wait, they
is a
have Christmas
human.
episodes?
You don't remember the Jackie Chan Adventures Jolly JT Maximus?
I don't think they ever premiered. I only ever got to watch the reruns. I never saw it when it was coming out.
I am going to have to send that to you. That is going to have to be a thing that you see now, because yeah, it's kind of awesome.
What was I? I don't know if it's Marvel. I know Marvel did it with like Santa having roots in Norse mythology, like he's a son of an Asgardian and a frost giant.
Right, and they also, I think, made him an Omega level mutant or something along those lines.
I think it depends. I'm not sure with that
I
Santa.
think there are like 3 different Santas in the Marvel comics. I know in a Constantine comic he is a like Yule spirit of the dance.
Hold on, I'm curious now. Oh, he's got a lot of names.
Yeah, as tends to happen when one is around for a long time, especially given that one of the main sort of starting points for the Santa mantle in a lot of these is Odin, and Odin, of course, collected names like it was going out of fucking style. And that's not even taking into account the fact that Odin is probably also the Dagda from Celtic mythology, who also collected names like it's going fucking out of style.
Okay, so this is interesting. In the DC Rebirth era, like post Flashpoint, Santa is a powerful wizard hidden under a city of ice called Myra, and Santa is known as Niklaus.
Yeah, so they are trying to have their cake and eat it too, with regards to the whole Saint Nicholas thing. I'm assuming.
Yeah,
hmm Which, if you're gonna do that, make the man Turkish. If you're honestly gonna go the Nicholas of Myra route, go the Nicholas of Myra route, which means he should be Turkish.
well, depending on how long he's lived, and okay, if it's from the era of Nicholas of Myra, um, and given evolution and stuff,
I
uh,
But
my point.
evolution requires
Okay,
multiple generations.
maybe not evolution, but given how often he would travel and depending on where he takes rest, um, he can change. His appearance can change over time. I mean, you ever notice
I
how sometimes people go to some place for a while and they kind of change a little bit, like
Right, that can change like the tone of someone's tan. It can't really change their race.
I'm
Like no amount of living in Europe is going to make a black guy not black anymore, especially if said black guy happens to be immortal and doesn't have children.
I'm just trying to make it figure out why they. Again, I don't disagree. It's stupid that they
The,
haven't
the,
made a
the,
Turkish
the,
version.
re- the reason they don't is because they don't actually think about the implications of Santa being Saint Nicholas, and or the Christians don't want to acknowledge the fact that most of the Santa imagery has less to do with Nicholas of Myra and more to do with Odin and Saturn. But I digress.
Right. Um, Also interesting. Sorry, a little sidebar here. Um, well, I mean, I know they made Santa, and he's not obviously he's not Saint Nicholas in the Rise of the Guardians. He's supposed to kind of be more based off a Cusack of Russia.
Yeah, he's definitely Eastern European in Rise of the Guardians, and yeah, that the he's definitely not Nicholas there.
Right. But he's called North. I can't remember his full name, but um, I'm just curious. Like again, I do think it would be interesting if they hold on, or that people in the past didn't want a non-white European Santa, and that sort of stuck. I mean, yeah,
I that feels I know obviously you're not thinking in SJW terms, DT, but I don't. That feels a little bit like my internalized or my institutionalized racism, and
I mean,
probably not.
I could at least see how people would think that. Not agreeing with it, but I could see how people see that.
Again, that feels very much sort of quasi SJW revisionist history shit.
Are we not going to pretend racism wasn't?
The more sensible answer is that the church might have tried to fit the winter or Yule spirit into a Nicholas of Myra shaped hole, but it didn't work because most people's visualization of the Yule spirit is of a European dude with a long white beard, because all the deities and spirits that conglomerated into what we now call Santa were European entities. Saturn, Gwenebnoth, Odin, etc. Yeah.
Eternal, I'm saying that the image was set during the racist times, not that even now we can't accept Santa for not being white.
Again, I really don't think that had much to do with it. I think most people, the average medieval peasant, just kept believing in the same Yule spirit they always believed in,
Dalton,
and the church's files had to find somewhere to stick him, so they stuck him with Nicholas of Myra.
I mean, I'm kind of with Dragon Troll, though. Are we not going to pretend, or are we going to pretend that there wasn't racism back then?
In the slave trade period, sure, but the Yule spirit and the church's tradition of shoving him into the Nicholas of Myra box comes from the Middle Ages, when there wasn't that much racial interaction. Like, it's very hard to form racial prejudices when you don't interact with people outside of your own race. It's one of the ironies of the SJW approach to things. In order for the SJW approach to history to be correct, they would have to have racial biases against races they don't even fucking see 9 times out of 100, or 99 times out of 100, which is just silly.
Okay, I guess I could see that point of view. Anyway, by the way, if
I could maybe see, like, in the Crusade period, if there was some kind of racial component, because of course, you know, they were fighting the Ottoman Turks and so on, and you know, the people from the Muslim world. So I could see maybe that being where the church might have been a little bit skeptical, because we don't want to make the people who are of a similar racial makeup to our religious and political enemies look good. So maybe if I squint really hard, you could kind of blame the Crusades for that a little bit. But then again, Nicholas of Myra came around like centuries after the Crusades, so the fuck.
Also, isn't there like a Russian Santa equivalent? I'm sorry, again, I'm just going back to the Guardians thing.
There are Yule incarnate spirits in just about every European culture.
My point. It said that guy wears blue, so wouldn't it have made more sense for North to wear? Because the whole red thing was more so just the Coca-Cola thing, right? It wasn't ever for Santa. So if I remember correctly, Santa was usually known to wear green or like blue before.
Yeah, the Father Frost is what it translates to in English. He usually wore blue.
I'm just saying, like, if they made Santa like basically a immortal Koshak.
Mm-hmm.
Am I using that right, by the way? The Koshak thing.
Cossack.
Koshak, thank you.
Is the word you're looking for there?
Cossack.
Yeah.
It's like a Russian soldier or something, or Slavic soldier.
I'm not okay. DT. I'm not I'm not trying to blame Christianity for everything. I was looking for a practical reason for the medieval church to have that kind of racial bias when most people, especially the peasantry, didn't, they didn't move hundreds of miles away from their homes and therefore have no. It's impossible to develop a bias against black people if you don't know black people exist. And for most of the Middle Ages, quite a lot of people didn't even know black people existed. So it sort of does feel a little SJWE to go, oh, they had this inexplicable racial bias against people they had never fucking seen. So to me, it makes more sense for a actual concrete political and spiritual phenomena like the Crusades to have impacted the desire to not depict Santa as Turkish than just inexplicable racial bias against races that most people haven't seen.
Hey guys. So you guys continue this conversation somewhere else.
Sorry.
Like after, no, it's fine. Like I get it. This is kind of par for the course, to be fair. It's just so like we don't get constantly sidetracked. Effectively.
I don't know how much I buy that either, DT. A lot of the early depictions of Jesus had more to do with Mithras and Dionysus than they had to do with any actual flesh and blood person, as far as we know.
Wait, I thought like religion. I thought like the Pope wasn't allowed to have kids.
That's a more modern, not modern, but it's more of an early modern tradition for clergy to be uber celibate, especially in the early years of the church. The idea of priests not having families wasn't really a thing.
That's weird.
Yes, history is very often weird.
Huh. Anyway, I'm sorry. Like I'm. Okay. Anyway, going. Whose turn was it again?
It was your turn.
All right, not my number one. Badass Santa.
And I want to speak on behalf of both myself and DT when I say this. You are really gonna like Kringle, as and when you finally get the fuck around to reading the Dresden Files.
Honestly, Don, I'm gonna live with you. Every time you be snarky with trying to recommend me it, I want to not read it out of spite.
Well, okay, but I'm doing so in order to share something awesome with you, and it's kind of annoying.
I know. To be okay again.
Read the Dresden Files.
I will read it when I can. All right. For the record, last 6 months I've been busy fucking working, and I've been tired out of my mind almost every other day. So.
Right, but that doesn't explain the what are we up to 3 years now that I've been recommending it. And you still haven't bothered to. Never mind.
Okay, I mean, to be fair, Dragon Troll does bring up the point. You know, I have said before that people recommend me stuff does turn me off to it sometimes.
We're just gonna have to be more insistent, DT. That's what needs to happen. War of attrition, goddammit. Eventually we will break him.
Right, but Badass Santa. I did start Worm. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still trying to read it. Again, it's more just been a time thing because I'm usually pretty busy. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, that's also kind of my main problem too. Because one, I have like the first 3 books of The Wheel of Time that I got for my birthday years ago, and I still haven't read them. I tried reading them. I have like a bookmark in like the first couple pages of the first book, but
I mean, Wheel of Time is A, very, very dense, and B, in my opinion, slightly overrated, so I can understand
I will
that.
bitch slap the fuck out of you. To be fair, like the weird thing is, I don't mind like learning about lore about stuff because usually I can watch like videos and stuff. That's it's weird. Like it doesn't help that the text on the page is kind of small for me. Because, well, to be fair, I take my glasses off to read because I'm like nearsighted, so it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I would of course point out that I tried to solve this issue like
with the
4
video,
years ago by
I
giving you
know,
the audiobooks.
I know. For one, I'm a procrastinator. I'm lazy. Not excuses, it's just what it is.
Yes, but that leads us back to the we need to DT and I need to join forces to strap you in the Ludovico technique chair. Is what needs to happen. War of attrition, baby. War of attrition.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If I probably should watch some videos talking about like the lore and stuff of the Dresden Files first before, because that's how I usually get into something is the lore.
I that's a okay. I genuinely don't know if there are Dresden File lore videos because Dresden Files being a relatively grounded urban fantasy doesn't really have like
I mean, I've seen.
uber like
I
high
looked into
fantasy lore to it.
to be fair, I looked at some videos years ago regarding theories about the series, so there might be some lore.
I haven't seen much in the way of Dresden Files lore videos, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means that I've never run across them, and it intuitively makes sense to me that there wouldn't be that many lore videos because it's not a grandiose Tolkien-esque high fantasy or like a Warhammer setting. It's a fairly grounded urban fantasy.
Okay, there is a wiki. All right, I'll take a look at that. Take me a while to read it, I'm sure, but if it's interesting, I'll be at it.
Okay. Slow progress. Maybe in the next 5 years we'll finally get him to start reading the things.
Okay, to be fair, I started listening to those videos when you sent them to me.
The audiobooks, yes. I remember you told me you got to the scene where Marcone is first introduced, but I don't think you got through the soul gaze part.
Uh, I think they might have started it, but I totally blanked out on it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so hey, I have some progress of it, so I mean, granted, it's been 5 years, so it's whatever. Anyway, back to the top three. My badass Santa. Obviously, like honestly, there are a lot of badass Santas in fiction. I guess the most recent one would have been last year with Violent Night Santa.
Yeah, which I wish we had gotten more. Speaking of lore, I wish we had gotten more lore on his on how he became Santa because
Also,
they made him a Viking, which can work, I suppose. I really hope there are Violent Night sequels that delve more into the like logistics of that.
unless there are like some comics that explain it, because they've done that with John Wick too to explain some stuff, and we
Are
just never
there
heard about it.
Violent Night comics? I'm gonna have to look that up now.
There could be, but I mean, okay, there. Yeah, I'm also just realizing there are a lot of badass Santa like characters in fiction. I mean, Violent Night. I kind of want to say the Robot Chicken Santa Claus because he's done some crazy shit in that show, and he was voiced by Seth MacFarlane. I mean, like
Mm.
one of the first skits I remember of of the Santa was basically he was doing like a what was the first Daniel Craig movie for
Casino Royale.
yeah they did a spoof of the Casino Royale intro.
Mm.
Basically, a kid flashed a maid got himself on the naughty list. Santa handled it personally, killed the guy's mom because his mom tried to kill him, and killed the kid because the kid tried to pull a gun on him. Hard ass motherfucker. Just saying. Um, hold on. I'm looking up to see if there are Violent Night comics. Oh, 2 years ago. Not last year. 2 years. Violent Night came out. Yeah, 2022.
That doesn't seem right. Sense of time, my old friend. What has become of you?
Okay, hold on. Okay. Okay, so I thought there could have been, but there are no Violent Night comics. It's just sometimes when those kind of movies do that, they do release some type of comic somewhere.
I know Michael Dougherty has comics for both of his IPs because there's Trick or Treat comics and Krampus comics.
Um,
It's one of those things that makes me wonder why in the fuck they haven't hired Michael Dougherty to write a Doctor Strange movie. But I'm gonna be beating that drum in perpetuity forever, probably. Although in theory, they could just have Sam Raimi write the third one. I don't know why they shoved Michael Waldron in the middle of the second one anyway.
that's
Moving on.
that's appreciated, General. But I think I'm good. I should just. I mean, honestly, I've done my own research with like wikis and stuff for DC things and Marvel and stuff. So yeah, just give me the link to the. It's like send me the link on Discord or something. For the Dresden Files wiki, and I'll probably be at it for a while looking at it.
I will be sending you the wiki. I don't like sending you text files if I can feasibly avoid it because I know you respond better to video format. That's why I was looking for Dresden videos.
Oh no, yeah, I don't give a shit about spoilers because most of the time I often forget them before I start something. Like I can't tell you how many times I've learned about a movie and I just forget it when I watch. Like forget like spoilers when I watch it.
Okay. Anyway, moving
Um,
on to I believe my last one, unless you have anything more to say about the badass incarnation.
well, it's just kind of like why it's my number one and why I like it is well, for one thing, it kind of makes sense given how his job works. That it would be awesome. Oh, the I just remembered another one. Weird. It's a weird pick, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Santa Claus from Regular Show.
No.
Well, to be fair, that's after your time, old man.
I started finally watching season 1 of Regular Show because it was free on Hulu. But I haven't gone deep enough down the Regular Show rabbit hole. I do know about the finale though because I remember seeing like ads for it with pops and anti-pops and stuff. So I know that thing is a thing, but
Well,
I don't know that much more about the Regular Show thing. Sadly enough, I think I learned most of what I know about Regular Show from binging with Babish the couple of times he's tried to make food related stuff. And I wish they had kept the reality bending the power keyboard, but yeah.
but yeah, it's just like for one thing, it's one. It's actually like the most used version of Santa Claus in terms of an archetype, like badass warrior stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't Grant Morrison do like a Robert E. Howard Conan style thing with his version of Santa?
Uh, Kinda. It was called Klaus. I would recommend a video call on from Danny Malt, who does like read-alongs for videos. He's done some really like interesting Mark Millar videos, like talking about those comics. Personally, I mean, he
Mm.
makes the Mark Millar comic Mark Miller Mark Millar.
Millar.
Millar. Um, Even though they're kind of crap, he actually makes them sound really entertaining. He doesn't do like voices like Comic Historian too much, but he has a clear passion for when he reads them.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's called Klaus Year One. It's super interesting. Plus, it's done by. Plus, the art's pretty good too.
I've been I had been I've been thinking about putting on my Christmas list like the past 5 Christmases, but I never can justify it in my head because typically, when you're opening presents on Christmas morning, then Christmas is kind of over, and so having a specifically Christmas themed Christmas present is a little weird.
I okay. I don't get that, but all right. Um, but yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I think I'm pretty much done. Dom.
My last one is the passing of the mantle. For this, see,
Santa
I
Claus.
yeah, yeah, the Santa Claus. There's a lot of crossover between this and Brainstormer's family lineage one because Arthur Christmas is another example, and so on and so forth. I do of these probably like something like the Santa Claus the best, just because it does make sense to me that something that intertwined with elves and fairies would be rather legalistic, which I we never really get an explanation as to where the actual like initial clause came from. So like who wrote that magically binding contract? And whose idea was it to try and minimize it all down on a card? Like I know it's a funny and interesting image and stuff, but like it strikes me that like putting it in like um legal like omnibuses and briefs and things probably would be more sensible.
Also, I only recently saw this theory when I was watching some clips of the Santa Claus 2
Hmm.
on YouTube. Someone had the theory that every one of those mascots for stuff, Mother Nature, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, or the Toothinator, as he wanted to be called,
Yes.
maybe Father Time too, and Cupid and all that, have a similar situation as Santa Claus.
To where it's like a mantle that gets passed down.
Yeah, if they accidentally kill or die or whatever the former. Although,
Which that raises the question, how in the fuck does one kill Father Time or Mother Nature? Like with some of the smaller ones I can see that
oh,
making sense, but if Mother Nature effectively has the powers of Gaia and Father Time has, dominion over all of time, how and why did or could someone kill them?
okay, I don't know about those two. Molinator, thank you. It's been a while since I watched it, so forgive me if that.
Yes. The Mother Nature, yes.
I
And Merv.
yeah. Um. Oh, so that's where that's where it came. That was actually first mentioned. Is that uh, I think it's a joke. That the guy who became the Easter Bunny was a hunter and mistook the original Easter Bunny and accidentally shot him, thus becoming.
So he has Alistair's backstory.
Eh. Um. Well, that makes me curious about Jack Frost too.
Well,
Uh,
that was going to be my inevitable follow up question to this, because as far as we know, Jack Frost seems to believe he's the only one to ever hold that position.
has been Hotel Director.
Yeah. Um. The point of reference there, GT, is Alistair was a serial killer. He dumped bodies of the people that he, or rather the bones, I guess I should say, because he was a cannibal, of the people that he killed and ate in like a hunting forest. And one time he went there, it was actually in use, and he wasn't wearing a orange vest. And well,
Well, given that it was the night, I don't remember when he died, but it was in the.
30s, I think. It
It's
was
not
either
explained.
30. It was either 30s or 20s that he died.
Dragon Trail. It's not in the show. It's like extra material. So don't worry about spoilers. Um, uh, so I don't know if the orange jacket or like anything to keep yourself from being shot by a hunter was a thing yet around that time.
I'm pretty sure it was. Like visibility vests and stuff go back quite a ways.
Hold on.
This is a very strange sidebar to get involved in a Santa Claus list, but okay. We are in this room now, as Bill Burr would say.
Oh, the 1930s. Okay, you. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Um, but yeah, he got mistook for a deer or something by a hunter and got shot in the head.
This
And
just
we also.
which
Um,
reminds me of the Looney Tunes duck season, rabbit season, duck season, fire bit.
Um, also, we actually had a conversation about this. Like, we talked about our own, like, kind of theory about Alistair, and like, since they mentioned he was a serial killer, there was a problem, and he's from Louisiana, right?
Yeah, he's a New Orleans boy.
Yeah. There was a prominent serial killer in the 1920s that was never caught, called the Axeman, who would kill people, butcher them with an axe, right? Because
Unless
they were playing
unless
jazz.
unless they were listening to jazz, which does seem rather on brand for Alistair, considering, Radio Demon.
Although, depending on, I wonder how old he was when he died, because given the fact he could have been too young at the time.
He died fairly young, I do believe. I want to say he was in like his late 30s. Like he wasn't older. He was still at least moderately in the prime of his life when he bit the bullet, so to speak.
Uh, I don't know. Um. Anyway, that's kind of our theory, which is weird because we never really do theories much.
No. And one of the reasons for that is because we usually find that our theories, when we do theories, makes more sense than what the show actually goes with. I do have a little bit of faith in VisiPop though. Although I heard a rumor that Rosie is the one who owns Alistair instead of either Lilith or Eve or Rue, and that strikes me as rather lame, because if Rosie owns his soul, unless there's a dark side to her that we haven't seen yet, he has no reason to resent her. They get along swimmingly.
Could be part
Whereas
of
if
the
it was
team.
whereas if it was Lilith who owned his soul, and one of her stipulations was go here and look after my daughter because I can't, I could see Alistair being, the bloodthirsty overlord that he is, being a little bit resentful that he's being kept, on a leash, as Husk put it.
Anyway, back to. Uh, do you have anything else for passing the torch, Santa? Or
No, yeah, I think we're done. And now on to the aforesaid Leon being a dumbass about Home Alone
yeah, give me
video.
1 sec. Give me 1 sec to pull it up.
In my defense, Dragon Turtle, some of the things that other people consider spoilers, I don't consider spoilers because to me it's not a spoiler unless you explicitly tell someone what happens. Like telling someone that a character shows up or there is something relating to a character does not qualify as a spoiler unless you're getting specific about what the thing that happens is. Like when I jokingly tell Brainstormer that he's probably going to wind up with a thing for Sigrengard, I wouldn't consider that a spoiler because he doesn't know who Sigrengard is yet or how she relates to things.
Yeah.
Actually, there are a lot of women in Dresden that Brainstorm are probably going to have a thing for. First and foremost among them, I swear to God, it's going to be Murphy. It's gonna be a 3-man like love triangle between you, Dresden, Murphy, and Kincaid. I think. Whenever you get around to actually reading them.
That's not really making me less likely to read a Giant Turtle. I'm just, to be fair, he says it's almost like every time, so I'm just kind of used to it. It's like white noise at this point to me.
I am waiting for the day when you finally do, and then I get to say the "I told you so."
Ah, my ass! I just sat down. To be fair, I've been sitting in this chair for like over an hour. I was like stretching my legs for a second, but god damn it! I know you don't know what that's like, but
Correction, I don't know what it's like not to feel like your legs are asleep because mine have never been awake. Fucking cunts.
okay. All right. Home Alone, white suburban revenge fantasy from Renegade Cut.
Yes, this is going to go very, very SJW adjacent Dragon Turtle. That's one of the reasons I picked this one.
It was published
Oh, ye
November
gods.
4th, 2019. Why we didn't cover it then, I have no idea. And
I
also
think
that
I think this was before we really established the rhythm of, seasonal months.
right. Oh, and the comments are turned off too.
I had noticed that, but given the topic of this video, I am sure those comments were filled with a bunch of people pointing out how very obviously wrong Leon is, but we will go into the specifics of that as we point out how wrong Leon is.
And just for the record, more than likely we're only going to hit the halfway point and try to finish it next week.
Yeah.
Just for time purposes, we'll try to hit like maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll call it there.
Yeah, depending on how quickly we can indeed move through things. But candy canes?
I'm gonna be feeling honest, knowing us, we're barely gonna get to 5 within an hour.
Is possible, but we should still make the valiant attempt. Candy canes.
I'd say look me in the eyes, but okay, swear to me that you don't know how we work with this kind of shit.
You're not wrong, but I choose to be optimistic anyway. God damn it.
Anyway, yeah, candy canes. You can hear it, right?
Home Alone
Yes.
was the origin of the kids
Can't
rule
see it though
90s.
because buffering.
That-
But
You want to head out real quick and
yep.
all right. Maybe I should turn up the volume a bit too. Let's Okay. There we go. All right.
Okay. Success. I can see things now. Huzzah. Shall we candy cane?
Hello.
Or okay.
Hello.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay. My internet was being crap for a second
Yep.
there. Everything was frozen on my end.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, candy canes.
Shit. I wish you kind of took a little longer because I was going and my internet didn't freeze because I was going to tell Dranter like I actually tried when I went to the library like a couple times at my local library and I actually tried looking for the Dresden Files books. Um, Unfortunately, the first book, Stormwatch, right?
Stormfront.
Stormfront. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Okay, I was already checked out. There were the other books there, but I didn't really feel comfortable like grabbing one out of order.
Jim is pretty good at recapping things that are relevant in the successive books, but I shall once again attempt to resolve this by sending you audiobooks. That is the correct solution to this problem.
I think I might still have the audiobooks actually.
I will send them again just to make sure.
No,
So
yeah,
that
I
it's
made a
not.
no, yeah, I made when you first sent them to me, I made a playlist for them.
I think I sent you the first 4 books, I do believe. I can
Yeah,
get you the other ones, I'm pretty sure. There's also a guy who does readings of the Dresden Files, and I think he did up to the first 12 called Hitchcock Handyman.
hold on. I want to check YouTube real quick, just because I'm trying to remember. Because I think at one point someone might have like the channel used to send the videos to me might have deleted them at one point.
Alright, which leads me back to the I will send you them again for the sake of efficiency. And if all else fails, there's always the Hitchcock Handyman option. Because I'm pretty sure his videos still exist. I haven't checked on him in a while because Dragon Turtle turned me on to some free audiobook websites, but I'm pretty sure Hitchcock Handyman's stuff is still there. In any case, though, the order of today is Leon Thomas and his
Yeah.
absurd opinions on Home Alone, and so candy canes.
Give me 1 sec.
Yep.
Hey, quick question. Anyone been watching What If? I know off topic, but
I know Agatha's getting a slot in What If season 3, but I haven't. And I know they
episode
made
2.
Supreme Strange the villain in What If season 2, which is stupid, but I haven't watched.
I believe it's episode 2 she was in. She played with the Eternals. She was an actress, got the powers of a celestial. Yada yada.
Wait, what? Why did they make Agatha Harkness in Eternal?
No, she's not an Eternal. She's still a witch.
What in the fuck?
You have to watch it, dude.
I will endeavor to make sense of this later. But first of all, we must now attempt valiantly, although probably failed, to make sense of Leon being dumb.
Okay,
Candy
I don't
cane,
have.
God damn it.
I don't have those Dresden Files videos.
This is why my first response was I will just send them again later. Anyway, candy canes.
No, yeah, you sent me like a whole playlist. Yeah, I think they might have been deleted. I didn't delete them. I think the channel deleted them. So I know I had a playlist of it.
Yeah, again, we will deal with this later. First point of order, though, is undoing all of Leon's stupidity. Candy canes.
Home Alone was the origin of the kids rule 90s. That Nickelodeon parents just don't understand corporations pretending to be kids claptrap of Blank Check and Baby's Day Out, and a million other pretenders to the Home Alone throne.
Okay.
Jesus Christ, are you so bitter?
Well, yes, but also, aside from the philosophical errors of that, which is him laying everything that is even potentially a problem at the feet of capitalism again, because dumb. That's just factually inaccurate. Probably the first youthful rebellion movie in like the millennial milieu or the like Gen X milieu that Home Alone fits into would be Dead Poet Society, which came out in 1987. And hell, The Simpsons started in 1989, which was like 4 years before Home Alone. So I don't know where you're getting off with this idea that Home Alone was the origin of the 90s Viva la Irreverence thing. But yeah, no, it certainly was an example of the 90s, irreverence in the face of authority milieu, but it was certainly not the origin point. And if you think it is, you really, for someone who's a film YouTuber at the end of the day, you're really not that educated on films if you think that Home Alone was the origin of the 90s youthful rebellion against establishment authority milieu. Because the Viva Irreverence thing that, typified quite a lot of Gen Xers and most millennials well predates Home Alone by like a decade still. It's an example of the form, but it is not the progenitor of the form by any stretch of anyone's imagination. But that's just me being pedantic and shitty. Candy canes.
All right.
Remember when Wednesday Addams just murked her entire summer camp? She just straight up burned them alive. I mean, I assume they survived much in the same way that no matter what Kevin McAllister did to the Wet Bandits, their bodies would absorb the pain and physical trauma and bounce.
Because
Jesus Christ.
cartoon
Okay.
logic, Leon. It's not some like
It's not even Leon.
highfalutin
Like, so many stupid people bitch about that.
like yeah, but because cartoon logic. And to be fair, the atoms in particular being irreverent in the face of normalcy is, it certainly didn't start in the 90s. The atoms have been the, goth finger in the eye of suburban normalcy since Charles Adams' original comics in the 30s. So what in the fuck? To be fair, it is most definitely true that they did, especially in Addams Family Values, have Wednesday fit into that aforementioned Viva la Irreverence mode of the 90s. But again, if you think it started there, you are strangely film illiterate for someone who is a film YouTuber, especially one that's constantly waxing lyrical about my academic themes and bullshit. Candy canes.
Bounce back up like Looney Tunes characters. But at its heart, Home Alone, which is a great movie, don't at me, is a story of family, of Christmas, and of the insulated world of white, upper middle class suburbia, and the socially conservative revenge fantasy of trespassers getting legally shot to death with no consequences due to the incredible reach of castle doctrine.
Motherfucker, you don't even sound like you believe that as you're reading it.
Do you see how those latter two things are not like the former two? Do you see how one of these is a broad human universal that can happen even by accident, and the latter two are you reaching the distance of the goddamn fucking Grand Canyon for the sake of academic woo? But spoiler alert for those who haven't watched this video, I recently rewatched the entire thing in preparation for this. Leon does this thing throughout this entire video where he will selectively enforce quote unquote realism and quote unquote logic and not think of any he does this. He does what I frequently call legislating the void. He creates a hole in the narrative of Home Alone, and rather than let any more straightforward or less cynical approach to the material come to the fore, he insists that his academic interpretation is the interpretation. And thus here we are. I can now see why the comment section had to be closed, Leon, because I'm sure 80% of the internet saw this, even people who previously liked your content, of which I was one once upon a not so very long ago when Leon was still on Channel Austin's purview. But I'm sure even your own audience post the TDS syndrome and post the Antifa defense and bullshit. Even looked at this and went, "What in the fuck are you smoking, dude?" Anyway, candy canes.
Okay, Stranger will say a few things. My realism, even as I don't bother to learn what is realistic and shit on everything not normal from a cynical perspective. Not saying this, or at least most of it, is secretly medically sound, but still. These guys would literally see coverage, a real story of someone being saved from when someone was trying to essay them and call it anti-minority, pro-vigilante, deletion spree propaganda.
Yeah, but meanwhile, if you ever point out how men or white people can be victims of said crime,
Dude, really?
whistle, nothing to see here. Anyway, candy canes. I'm
Okay.
determined that we should at least get halfway through this.
I want to bet money, but I know you don't got any.
The money that I have in my wallet is currently going to giving you Christmas presents, my dude. So, of all
That's
the
why I
people
said-
in this world that has cause to complain about my lack of funds, given that you're benefiting from them, you are not one of them.
Well, no, I don't want. I want to bet that we're not going to make it halfway.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Candy canes.
candy canes.
All right, let's back up because that's a lot. In the
Shit.
United States, Castle Doctrine designates that a person's home is a kind of safe zone for the homeowner or renter in which they can employ force, even lethal force, on anyone they deem an intruder or trespasser, regardless of whether said intruder poses any legitimate threat. If the homeowner
Motherfucker, they are an intruder breaking into your fucking house. It is a legitimate threat.
Well, there's that angle, which I hadn't previously considered. Well done, Brainstormer. But there's also this thing of, Leon, as you yourself alluded to, Home Alone very much thrives on Looney Tunes style cartoon or child logic. Like that's the entire conceit of the movie requires that it operates on some level of like sentimental cartoon logic. And the reason I bring this up is because, as a general rule, people know not to take seriously the events of cartoons or child logic. For the same reason that you don't see people trying to stick their fingers in guns like Bugs Bunny all the time. Because we know there's a level of irreducible surreality in these kind of cartoonish situations that makes the reality of the situation less applicable. And given that everyone knows, or like, and when I say everyone knows, I mean a vanishingly small minority of people so small as to be irrelevant do not know to, take the surreality of cartoon logic with a grain of salt. And as a result, trying to tether something you've already admitted to be a explicitly irreverent cartoon, refusing to treat a deliberately irreverent cartoon of a movie with the customary level of absurdity and surreality that they all are caked in, means that you are missing the point by a full 360 degrees, sir. You can't simultaneously acknowledge the cartoonish absurdity and surreality of the situation and then immediately forget about that very same filter of surreality and absurdity when it's convenient for you. And if we're allowed to arbitrarily enforce realism into such a situation, then I'm going to hold you to that standard. If you get to arbitrarily decide certain levels of reality get to be applicable after all, then so will I. And as we'll see in the course of this video, I think a lot of my arguments for quote-unquote realism in this vein make more sense and are more straightforward than yours. Anyway, candy canes.
All right. Oh, Gentle, the people boxing you in the alley might just want to hand you a pamphlet about their religion or ask for a donation to charity. Maybe see if you found their lost dog. He says that in quotes, obviously.
Yeah, Dragon Turtle, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you would not believe how prescient that sarcastic remark of yours is about to be. We will get there. Candy canes.
says they feel threatened by someone on their property, the threat can be eliminated by any means necessary.
I'm going to give you to the count of 10 to get your ugly, no good keister off my property before I pump your guts full of lead.
Castle Doctrine extends itself so far that you can walk onto someone's property and into their garage to talk to them.
I don't I don't particularly care to refute the legal particulars of Leon's
Hold on.
argument because
I thought it had to be with for, I thought it was like force, or is that no? That's citizen's arrest, right? Like to apprehend someone with
I'm not particularly going to hyperfixate on the legal particulars of this because even if he's right, even if his interpretation is accurate, which I don't think so, because Leon is one of those anarcho-communist Antifa sympathetic types. So I'm willing to bet that at least some of this is filtered through cynical academic woo, but I'm willing to meet him on the battlefield of his legal particulars because he can be right about this and still be wrong about literally everything the fuck else he says in the video, and I'd rather focus on that. Candy canes.
Completely unarmed, and the homeowner can kill you in the garage without legal consequences. This infamously happened in Montana. The homeowner was not threatened, but he used castle doctrine as an excuse to legally kill the victim. See, the homeowner had a grudge against him for allegedly sleeping with his wife. Castle doctrine was just the excuse, but it completely protected him from prosecution. Many states in the US have strengthened these conditions by creating a stand your ground law, which is effectively castle doctrine for anywhere else outside your home. Stand your ground laws establish a right.
Okay,
establishment.
now
Hold on. I want to read the
God.
whole thing. Establishes a right by which a person may defend oneself or others against threats or even perceived threats, even applying lethal force, regardless of whether safety retreating from the situation might have been possible.
Okay, but again, I don't particularly care to get into the legal particulars of this. What I will do is be philosophically pedantic, as is my default setting. Because I will see your stand the ground law, Leon, and I will raise you, whose street, our street, get the fuck off our street. Because I know you, at least based on what you've defended and espoused in of your beliefs in videos and things, well enough to know that you are one of those, if not anarcho-communist motherfuckers, you're at least highly sympathetic to the anarcho-communist motherfuckers who call themselves Antifa. And if castle doctrine and stand your ground are a step too far, because derp violence, then you're gonna have to explain the fuck to me how stand your ground and castle doctrine are a step beyond the pale, but whose street, our street, isn't. Given that one of these at least feigns some sort of connection to private property and private spaces, and one of these is frequently espoused by people who are committing acts of willful violence in a public motherfucking space, usually in order to shove other people out of said public space on their own behalf. So if you're gonna have such a problem with castle doctrine and stand your ground, Leon, then I hope there's nowhere on the internet where I can find you supporting whose street, our street. Except I know you again, and I know that you have, under several situations, basically all but called yourself a anti-fascist, quote unquote. And given the preponderance of people in Antifa who are anarcho-communists and anarcho-syndicalists, this leads me once again to, if I have such a problem with castle doctrine and stand your ground, why do you go whistle, whistle, nothing to see here when people are going whose street, our street, etc. Moving on. Candy canes.
Hold on, Giant Turtle, how could that not justify anything? This guy claimed that his child was being attacked, so he could blame that guy. So therefore, defending your kid should be illegal and is racist. It's the same thing as the Rittenhouse, whose street is the mob and the left one at that, and not the individual.
We will get back to Kyle Rittenhouse later on because, again, these comments of yours are jumping the gun and being slightly prescient, which I applaud you for, but let's at least we'll address things as they come up rather than preemptively addressing them. Candy canes.
Candy canes.
By which a person may defend themselves against threats or perceived threats, even to the point of applying lethal force. Now, everyone has a right to defend themselves, but stand your ground laws establish that even if you could easily escape, or even if you don't have to kill the person to end the threat, you still can, for whatever reason, and never be prosecuted.
Again, I suspect there is some very biased reasoning going on here, because I suspect there's a lot of interpretism going on here, considering that the entire conceit of this video is shoving a, titanium bar worth of interpretivism into Home Alone and forgetting to abide by the absurdist surrealism and cartoonishness that Home Alone operates in. But again, if you're allowed to do the arbitrarily take things seriously, arbitrarily ask for straightforward logic maneuver, Leon, I will let you do it, and then I will immediately hang you by your own petard, because again, I, like a sane person, can abide by this thing called in-universe logic, and my stretches of realism and interpretivism are far more reliant on that in-universe logic than your argument is. And when you're reaching farther than I am, then I can hoist you by your own petard, because you brought arbitrarily enforceable realism and straightforwardness into a otherwise absurdist and cartoony environment. And so now, turnabout is fair play. Candy canes.
Alright.
In simpler terms, the difference between self-defense and stand your ground is that self-defense must be done when necessary, but stand your ground permits you to defend yourself with lethal force even when unnecessary. If you claim you were threatened, sometimes even if you started...
Who arbitrates what is necessary? I know I said I wasn't going to waste so much time in the legal half of this, but your description here necessitates some standard as to what is and is not necessary. And who decides what is and is not necessary? Is there an actual, explicated and defined definition we can go with? Are there particulars that can differentiate necessary from unnecessary? Or is this just to be decided at the whim of whoever thinks themselves to be the victim? Because I do want to save the Kyle Rittenhouse discussion for later because it becomes relevant later. But, for example, could you, Leon Thomas, supporter of things Antifa and so on, and a probable, if not anarcho-communist, at least anarcho-communist sympathetic person, if you, as the person you are, can decide arbitrarily that, for example, Joseph Rosenbaum defending himself from Kyle Rittenhouse was necessary, but Kyle Rittenhouse defending himself from an angry mob is somehow not necessary, then you see where I'm not willing to be charitable with you when you say the difference is simply one of these is necessary, the other one is not. Because unless we have a codified and refined explication of what constitutes necessity in this case, then it's literally whosoever feels like the biggest victim in any given circumstance is the one more justified in using force. Which, that's a good way to see cities burn. It's another one of those things that Antifa is rather known for doing in their fiery but mostly peaceful way. TM. Candy cans.
The conflict by, say, arming yourself with a gun and tracking down an unarmed teenager who wasn't doing anything wrong, you probably won't be convicted of anything. You might even use that notoriety to become an even bigger piece of shit, the likes of which are only told in campfire stories to children. The conditions of the stand your ground.
I don't know to what case he is referring, and I don't care. Because, again, trying to focus on his philosophical failings, not his legal ones. Although, as a philosophical aside, I will point out that his interpretation of this seems biased as all hell. And I know it happens to come from the Antifa style place, because Leon has been fairly consistent upon this pretty much for the entirety of the Trump administration and so on. So, yeah, I'm willing to bet anarcho-communism or anarcho-syndicalism or one of its cousin ideologies is at the root of some of this misinterpretation. But that's for Legal Eagle or maybe Nick Rekieta to deal with. I'm here to laugh at you for being a moron philosophically and be overly pedantic in that vector, because that's the vector I'm actually qualified in to some degree.
Sounds like the Zimmerman case.
It may well be, and again, I don't know the particulars thereof, and I don't know to what degree Leon is uncharitably warping things for the sake of his philosophical argument. So, unless it becomes more relevant to the overall point, I'm going to try and take his interpretations as read to at least some degree, so that I don't, A, get accused of being uncharitable as shit, and B, we can actually focus on the main vector of the video. Candy canes.
I still don't see how this relates to Home Alone, really.
He's going to say that Home Alone is basically stand your ground or Castle Doctrine propaganda, and that we should be siding with Harry and Marv against Kevin, more or less.
Okay, not only do they break into people's homes, at Christmas, they fucking ruin them by flooding the places.
Yeah. Which I believe counts as arson, because I don't think that
vandalism.
kind of property destruction is just limited to fire, so I think the flooding counts as arson, but we'll address that when he actually gets into how it relates to the movie.
I think it would just be vandalism, to be fair.
Well, it's specifically property damage with the attempt to profit by that property damage, so... Again, trying not to get bogged down into legal particulars because it's only tangentially relevant to his philosophical errors. So, candy canes.
Law depends on the state and the wording of the law, but they all operate in a similar fashion. Now, some places in the US don't operate on strict castle doctrine or strict stand your ground. This is commonly called duty to retreat, and it works like this. You can still defend yourself if your life is definitely in danger, but if there is...
Okay, I just want to say this before you say anything, Don. Can this motherfucker just ever... Like, it's these videos that I really despise, that these motherfuckers never get to the point. They spend minutes
Well,
just...
in his defense, and this is probably the last time I'm going to say this in this video, he's setting up the background of his point so that his audience will be informed on what kind of point he's trying to make.
Okay, fair enough. But I think he could say it in a more clear, concise, and faster way.
Also, he probably could avoid strawmanning and misinterpreting laws that he doesn't like. But again, that's why I'm trying not to get bogged down into legalism, because if we get bogged down into legalism, we'll never actually get to the being philosophically wrong about Home Alone part, and that's the fucking crux of the argument. Candy canes.
Giant turtle arson is just starting uncontrolled fires on purpose.
Okay, so arson does only apply to fires. Okay, I didn't. That's why I said I wasn't sure. I thought that arson was any sort of mass property destruction, but thank you for clarifying.
Again, why
Anyway.
I say vandalism makes sense.
Yeah, candy canes.
Candy canes.
A reasonable opportunity to avoid killing someone, then you can't just decide to kill them anyway. This seems like the most reasonable way the law should work, but in the US, only a couple places operate this way. The states in the purple operate under both Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws, so, most of the country.
Okay, motherfucker. Go to another country and see how it fucking works for you if you don't have these laws then.
Well, okay, and again, not particularly relevant. But again, this is going to become relevant to him basically, to use a modern term, glazing Marvin Harry and trying to demonize Kevin and Kevin's family as much as philosophically possible.
Okay, well, I'm also going to say this. I'm just saying, like, if a motherfucker's going to criticize a country that he lives in, go to another fucking country and see how it works out for you. See how different it is. I'm sorry.
I'm not even going to attempt to reason with him on that score, because, again, Leon caught the TDS really, really fucking hard, and went full Antifa, or next best thing to full Antifa. So, I think we might be talking to someone too far gone on that vector. But yeah, candy canes.
Candy canes.
The states in blue operate under both Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws, but in these cases, even in your car. The pink states operate under Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground, at least in practice, and the peach states have Castle Doctrine, but not Stand Your Ground. There are only 2 places in the United States of America that operate under the significantly more reasonable.
I don't really have any commentary. Let's just let him finish the point. Candy canes.
Reasonable duty to retreat. Vermont and Washington, D.C., so only one state and the District of Columbia. Castle Doctrine on paper might be about your safety, but it is so broad and far-reaching that it can be exploited, such as in the case in Montana. Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws exist.
Every law can be exploited.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, how many people do you suppose exploit this humanitarian permissivism of yours? This every crook is secretly Aladdin and has a Doofenshmirtz backstory approach of yours? Because that seems to be the counterweight to what you're suggesting here. If you think Stand Your Ground and Castle Doctrine are morally unpermissible, and you do go on later on in this video to espouse some sort of classist sympathy for criminals, as exemplified by Marvin Harry, does this therefore mean that we are obliged as a society to assume every criminal, or at least every not explicitly violent criminal, is a Aladdin with a Dr. Doofenshmirtz backstory in tow? Because who do you think that's going to help? Is it going to help the people who are actually downtrodden in the way that specifies? Or is it going to help a lot of people who are more unscrupulous than that hide behind the Aladdin Doofenshmirtz image and get away with more heinous shit? Because how's San Francisco doing, Leon? How's Portland doing, Leon? Like, when these things are mapped into reality, then yeah, being hyper authoritarian to any criminal ever is a problem, and I do genuinely think that a lot of non-violent offenses probably could be loosened at least a little bit, but going hard reset in the opposite direction and lionizing and worshipping the sacred victimhood of the criminal by assuming that they're all either Aladdin or Dr. Doofenshmirtz, is going to have its own various negative repercussions. Anyway, candy canes.
It's because fire can spread. It's because fires can spread, so it's special. Destruction of property, at least your own or a friend, for profit is insurance fraud or a charity scam if you go that route. Sure, they are bad, but if we read between the lines and see the groups I claim they represent and how I claim they act, or does he literally defend their interpretations as we've seen?
He does for most of the first Home Alone. He gets annoyed in the second Home Alone when they get more characterization and don't fit his overly charitable interpretation of them from the first one. Candy canes.
Alright.
Partly due to the socially conservative, violent culture of the country. Everyone wants to be a murder hero. The man with the thick beard who drives around in a massive truck with tinted windows. Not only prepared to defend himself with lethal force, but hoping to defend himself with lethal force. The man.
What the fuck are you on about?
This isn't just a straw man. This is building an entire fucking universe out of straw there, Leon. Do you understand the difference between villainy and heroism, between treachery and justice, between vindication and malicious vengeance? Because your again, straw world building there implies that you see no difference between a person standing up against someone who has wronged them and someone doing the wronging. Or rather, it seems that way, at least with regards to people you arbitrarily define as conservative, because again, I happen to know there have been several instances where Leon has defended the Antifa-style methods. So Portland Portland Antifa, he sees them as heroic, regardless of how much violent shit they cause, and no person who has ever been more conservative than Leon has ever had any cause to be heroic in his mind, it seems. Moving on. Candy canes.
Jesus Christ, this guy's fucking insane.
Yeah, I didn't notice when I rewatched this recently for the sake of familiarity, that the comments were turned off, but now I'm seeing why it makes sense that those comments are turned off, because I'm sure a bunch of the comments were, dude, are you insane? You're wrong for this reason, that reason, and the other reason, and he didn't like that, presumably.
Because
Candy canes.
Man who walks into a restaurant or pharmacy with their guns exposed, hoping people will comment on them, hoping to start a conflict. The truth is, nobody buys anything without the intention of using it, and that includes lethal weapons. Another reason these laws exist is because the U.S. places a great deal of value on personal property.
Okay. Fuck the rest of that sentence. The people only buy things with the intent to use them thing. Let's de-gun-ize this particular point and see if it still holds up, Leon. What if I were to say, just like you did, people only buy things with the intent to use them, and therefore we should look askance at everyone who owns a fire extinguisher because it might well mean that they're doing, arson in their spare time, or insurance fraud in their spare time. Do you see how that would be an uncharitable use of that? You see how that logic makes no fucking sense? Well, it also makes no fucking sense with guns. Yes, there are bad uses to which guns can be put. But there are neutral and positive uses to which guns can also be fucking put. Just like with fire extinguishers. Yes, you can use a fire extinguisher to put out a fire that you yourself started for the sake of committing insurance fraud. But if we looked sideways at every motherfucker who's ever bought a fire extinguisher, assuming by default that they must be engaged in insurance fraud, that would be a rather lopsided way of looking at the world, wouldn't it? But, because you dislike guns because they are quote unquote inherently violent, you spontaneously forgot that target shooting and hunting are things. You spontaneously forgot that non-lethal wounding with guns is also possible. You spontaneously forgot that people like guns for like collecting and aesthetic purposes as well. You just like again, swap gun for literally any other object that has one of many like nefarious uses and several uses that are not nefarious at all. Like, imagine if we were still living in the 19th century and you said, no one who doesn't intend on going on a stabbing spree owns a sword, so we should look askance at anyone who owns a sword, even if they just collect them for antique value or
Alright,
something.
Trying to all these people would defend SA or forcibly deleting others depending on who is on what side, not why, who aggressed, etc., just which demographics they represent. Do people buy bomb shelters with the intention of starting a war? This is actually how people think, like the irrational distrust of anyone during the pandemic who actually had supplies or extra food.
Yeah, or are you skeptical about this one particular vaccine that was made under historically and medically anomalous circumstances? Well, then that makes you just as insane as the theocrat anti-vaxxer who prefers to pray every sickness away. Anyway, moving on. Candy canes.
Kids.
Even at the expense of human life. Is your stereo more valuable than a human life? To this guy, apparently so. And that brings us back to Home Alone. Aha, I knew we'd get back there. So, Home Alone, which is a great movie, don't at me, really plays up that revenge fantasy. A revenge fantasy is the...
Okay, I'm gonna say this point now and probably wind up repeating it at least 2 or 3 times because he comes back to this point. But just for the sake of philosophical intrigue, Leon, you are about to go on a 7 or 8 minute tirade about how Home Alone is a morally bankrupt propaganda movie and that under normal circumstances you wouldn't be okay with people liking it. But as you just said, Home Alone is a great movie, don't at me. Which leads us to a question. In most circumstances, you consider it perfectly reasonable to judge people who like things that you consider immoral. And you would also advise people who are on your own side of keeping away from things you consider immoral so as to not encourage those things. But in this one lone instance of you actually thinking like a goddamn human being, or at least trying to, you acknowledge that something can be good despite being morally or politically foobar in your opinion. Which I bring this up because that raises a question. Do you consider stuff like artistic quality to be more important than sociopolitics and morality? In which case, that basically defeats your entire argument, because if artistic quality and meritocracy can be more important than sociopolitical morality, then what in the fuck is this video? And if you don't consider artistic merit or artistic quality to be a good enough reason to forego hyper adherence to socio-political morality, then you, by your own standards, are an immoral person now. Because you are about to go on an 8-minute spiel about how morally bankrupt, propagandistic, and evil Home Alone is, and still maintain that you like it and continually watch it year after year. So are you A, a hypocrite, or B, a complete and utter moron, or C, both? I'm leaning in the direction of both. Is the thing at this particular juncture. We've dealt with enough Leon Thomas videos, enough Renegade Cut videos to know that the answer is most likely C. Candy canes.
The desire to be mildly wronged so that one can exact a disproportional response for violent satisfaction. Kevin McAllister is accidentally left home when his family goes on vacation to Paris over Christmas. Harry and Marv, collectively the Wet Bandits, are cat burglars who rob from the rich. They're the bad guys, I guess.
Okay, Leon, is there such a thing as a not disproportional response? I.e., is there such a thing as people who are bad enough to justify proportionally a lethal or nearly lethal response? And moreover, and this will become relevant later, are there any circumstantial factors that can tip things in one direction or the other? Because I would like to remind you, and I will remind you again later when it comes up, that Kevin McAllister is, I want to say, an 11-year-old child in the course of Home Alone 1 and like 12 or 13 in Home Alone 2.
It was 12, I believe.
Okay, so yeah. Kevin McAllister is an 11-year-old child who is without any adults that are, likely to listen to him. Now, mind you, you could make the argument that he could have asked the neighbor once he realized the neighbor wasn't a bad guy and everything. But some allowances have to be made for the sake of, narrative catharsis and 3-act structure and all that. So I will hand wave away that slightly. But we as the audience know, Leon, that Harry and Marv are bumbling idiots. But Kevin, in universe, has no mechanism to determine that Harry and Marv are bumbling idiots. They could just as easily be Yosef Tarasov's gang from John Wick 1, or to swap a Joe Pesci for a Joe Pesci. We the audience know that Harry is a bumbler in this movie, but he could just as easily be Tommy from Goodfellas. And in the event that Harry and Marv were not bumbling idiots, but remotely semi-competent or dangerous, Kevin would not, in fact, be ill-advised to be very cautious about them and or try to prepare for them accordingly. Is the thing. We as the audience know Harry and Marv are morons. Kevin, at least prior to the events of, the third act, doesn't really have any mechanism to determine that the criminals he's dealing with are not dangerous, bloodthirsty, or evil enough to want to murder a child for the sake of no witnesses, for example. So it is entirely reasonable for him to perhaps engage in some disproportionate preparedness in the event that he is dealing with people more dangerous than we, the audience, are aware of. Moving on. Candy canes.
Alright, hold on. I know by these people's laws and things, tall people are objectively advantaged and short people discriminated. It's morally good for shorties to go break tall people's legs.
I realize that might be a bit of a. I realize that might be a bit of a stretch, and there are certainly enough people involved in the minor coding discourse to go there, but for the purposes of the movie, Kevin has no more traditional means of defending himself than his apparent gift for, like, Jigsaw-style civil engineering. So, given that the weapon he has to hand is the weapon of his intelligence, is he wrong for loading for bear, going up against two adults when he himself is a child? And again, we as the audience know that Harry and Marv are harmless morons for the most part, but Kevin doesn't have a mechanism to determine that.
IIRC, I always forget what that means. After about half the traps they went through, they were arguably prepared to delete Kevin. It's the idea that those in privileged classes should at best be given more scrutiny, if not right out have crimes against them be justified.
Yeah, but that's not the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making is it's perfectly rational and in no way disproportionate for someone to compensate for their disadvantages.
Don, I don't think he was saying you were making that idea. And if you look at all the traps, only a couple ever stopped them from leaving. And the gauntlet was set up expecting them to escape, though eventually.
Yeah. To be charitable to Kevin in ways that Leon never will, the Harry and Marv could have left at any point after the ignition of the first trap, pretty much, I think, all the way through to the end. So at least some of their damage might be their own fucking fault, because Harry, the kid had the foresight to set up a flamethrower over the bathroom door, and you still stuck around.
No, it was the back door. The first movie was the black door.
Yeah, but most people, even if they survived that, which a lot of these things wouldn't be survivable, but for the sake of Looney Tunes logic, but most people, even if they could survive that, probably would go, fuck this isn't worth it, I'm getting the fuck out of here at some point. But we'll address that when Leon brings it up. Candy canes.
Sorry, scratch my head real quick. Sorry. All right. Candy canes.
Yes. Kevin becomes aware of the Wet Bandit's plan to rob his house at 9 o'clock and creates a series of traps to defend his rich family's property. Before tackling the legality of this and the ethics of what Kevin is planning, can we just acknowledge that the McAllisters are bougie as hell? The movie places their home somewhere around Chicago, but clearly...
And for the mortal sin of being bougie and not even, like, arrogant or disdainful about it, you are now going to explain to me why a 11-year-old child is not obligated in any way to defend himself. Because very much apart from all his things and his family's things, and the fact that he is essentially taking up the role of the homesteader because he is the only member of his family occupying the house, he's also defending himself. Or are we just going to pretend like if Kevin had opened the door to them, you know, friendly and cooperatively and shit, like a good little anarcho-communist, they wouldn't have immediately thought to themselves, well, thanks, kid, for being so nice, and we'll try to make this quick, but here's the thing, we can't leave witnesses alive, so be a good little boy and face the wall. We'll try to make this as quick and painless as possible, and then freaking double tap him. Because that, if we're allowed to arbitrarily bring realism into the situation, assuming that Kevin erroneously thought like you thought just now, Leon, and thought to himself, I'm going to open the door in class solidarity like a good little anarcho-communist, they're not going to just go, thanks, kid, have a nice day. They're going to think to themselves, well, even if he is being nice now, he might always call the police after we've left, and that's a big pain in the ass, and also it's not a good idea to leave witnesses in the fucking first place. So, apart from defending the property that is his own and his family's to defend, he's also defending himself as a child against two fucking adults. And this must be stressed because, again, at that point, when you're at that stark of a disadvantage, loading for bear and countering that disadvantage with an advantage is perfectly sensible. Moving on. Kitty cats.
Sorry. Yep. Kitty cats.
They live in the suburbs in a giant house with 3 floors and a basement. In fact, even in this wealthy neighborhood, the Wet Bandits remark how the McAllister home is the real prize, with Harry getting an almost sexual thrill out of plotting to rob them.
Hey, look, that house is the only reason we started working this block in the first place. Ever since I laid eyes on that house, I wanted it.
Because this
And
motherfucker's
yet-
weird.
And yet, none of what Harry just says in any way qualifies as malicious intent, for which he should perhaps be reprimanded in any way whatsoever. Because you're projecting all of this castle doctrine, stand your ground, bougie
Hey.
bullshit onto Kevin
Hey,
and Kevin's family.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, my family has experience with their house being broken in before. This is before I was born, and we're lower income family, so it's not just reserved for. I don't get what the fuck you people are.
Well,
what this
no,
motherfucker-
he is holding the fact that the McAllisters are wealthy against them. That's why I brought it up.
Right, it's
Leon
fair,
is
but my point is, one, robbery can happen to anyone, right? Not just wealthy people, not just whatever, right? But there is a sense of uneasiness when that fucking happens. It makes you not feel safe in your own fucking home. And doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or whatever, that's not a good feeling in your own fucking house.
Yeah, Leon doesn't care because the existence of the McAllister's wealth means that on some abstract socio-political level they deserve it.
I mean, to be
Because
fair, most of the McAllister family seem like pieces of shit.
I would say neglectful is the worst thing that can be levied against them for the most part.
Okay, the parents, possibly. The kids are pieces of shit.
Well, kids are often pieces of shit. It's kind of like
Yeah, but okay, look. Given my experience with kids, and don't get me wrong, I've met many kids when I was a kid that were total assholes and worthless pieces of shits, and God, did I want to bash their fucking teeth in.
yeah, sympathies.
But well, to be fair, it seemed more like the older brother who was a total asshole.
Buzz, the teenager, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just saying, man. To be fair, no one really. I mean, even Kevin, it kind of comes across a dick sometimes.
Well, to be fair, I think Kevin is like the second youngest or the youngest, and younger siblings always get it from older siblings. So that's why I don't particularly hold it against them, because older siblings will in perpetuity be shitty to younger siblings. That's just sort of how the game works. I was never that way. Then again, I was also crippled, so the domain was off limits for me for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Okay.
digress.
Giant Turtle Actually, these guys would have tapped him in that case, but just because they are bandits in a children's movie, so they are fairly soft. Some criminals would be like that, others not. These people defend theft against poor people too, long as it isn't by those of a higher tax bracket. People describe it having your house broken into is similar to SA. Just on a lower scale, it's still a violation that doesn't let people feel safe and taints the thing in a way. Same for when people are betrayed, though significantly lesser to even the break-in.
Yeah. And I will give it to Harry and Marv. Their original plan was to go in when no one was there. So, like, at that point, it's probably more of a burglary charge than a robbery charge. The difference between burglary and robbery, if anyone doesn't know, is burglary is taking shit without harming anyone. Robbery is taking shit while harming people. So, in the world where the McAllisters weren't neglectful pieces of shit parents and bothered to check and make sure all their children were, going with them on their vacation.
Well, no, they
Harry
did.
and Marv.
Hold on. They did do a head count, but the problem was.
But the neighbor kid bollocks it up. I know, but a head count should be probably followed up by a face and body count, i.e., making sure that it's actually the person you intended to count before going off in the.
Okay, I'm just asking how often would you? Again, the kid was wearing the same clothes as Kevin, same size as Kevin, same age as Kevin. I'm assuming.
I realize the McAllisters have like 13 children, and that is stressful at the best of times.
Hold on. Giant Turtle, they also left it to an older sibling. So, and that motherfucker ain't going to really be that.
Yeah. So, one way or the other, negligent stupidity is at work here. But regardless of the McAllisters' negligent stupidity, in the world where their vacation went along as intended, Harry and Marv would have actually just went in, taken a bunch of shit. Marv would have thematically flooded the house, which honestly, the flooding probably is going to do more damage than anything else. But details. Assuming that the premise of the movie didn't happen, Harry and Marv go in with the empty house, and all they do violate his property. But we don't live in the world where the premise of the movie didn't happen. We live in the world where it did. And Harry specifically says something to the effect of, once the Wet Bandits realize that they've been being played for the last few days, Harry says something to the effect of, "We know you're in there, pal, and that you're all alone." And he says it in a very deliberately antagonistic, deliberately playful, spooky sort of way. And to an 11-year-old, actually to most people, if you said that to an 11-year-old who for whatever reason was home alone, most juries would say that proves your intent to harm them. Because again, most criminals, even relatively benign, relatively bungling ones, are going to operate on the principle of no witnesses, and we need to make sure he doesn't call the cops after we're gone. So one way or the other, Kevin is going to wind up getting screwed, even in the hypothetical where he did behave like a good little anarcho-communist and show class solidarity, TM. So, I realize that Harry and Marv didn't intend to harm anyone when they did the thing, other than the implicit harm of, getting your property taken and shit. But, in the world where Kevin behaved like a normal kid and didn't have his knack for civic engineering that would rival MacGyver, he's going to wind up either tied up or injured or more than likely dead if we play, realism card. So,
anyway, candy canes?
Yeah. Candy canes.
McAllister family treats the working class pizza delivery driver like scum, by the way. First, they ignore him, and then once Kevin is alone, he stiffs him on the tip and then absolutely terrorizes him by pretending someone is firing lethal rounds at him. He's just
They
trying to make
don't-
a living, you privileged butthole. The pizza
They
delivery
don't-
driver.
They don't ignore him because tut the pause or something like. It's not a I know it's going to be it's really going to bake your noodle, Leon. But most people don't operate on like thinly veiled classism, racism, etc. They ignore him because it's like a week before Christmas. They're planning a trip, and like 13 kids worth of household and their cousins are all like raising hell and being hectic because holidays.
Yeah, what? That's the opening scene. That's like established how fucking like insane it all is. man.
Hectic. So yeah, it's not out of some we don't want to interact with the pause bullshit, Leon. It's because they're busy. They have like 13 kids plus their cousins to deal with, and like everyone is in the middle of playing games and doing all sorts of shit because it's Christmas, and kids be like that when Christmas happens. So like, I don't know where you're getting off thinking tut my classism. And as for Kevin being a dick, he's the neglected younger sibling of 13 siblings. And as is shown throughout the movie, he's very street smart and very self-reliant. So that has less to do with him being classist and more to do with him being a kid who thinks he's being funny. And who has to, think 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else because he's the either bottom of the totem pole or the next to the bottom of the totem pole of his 13 siblings, several of whom are delinquent as shit. So,
Okay, Giant Turtle, you do have a point there. Even if Kevin had a good reason for it, the delivery driver was screwed over for no reason. That's normal for kid shows, and for real life, petty things are either blown up out of proportion if people relate to it, and dismissed if not.
And while we're playing the arbitrarily and selectively enforcing realism card, what happens if the pizza delivery guy gets there and realizes the kid is home alone? I realize, this was the 90s, which isn't so far removed from like the latchkey kid days that might be so shocking. But assuming that the pizza delivery guy had a little bit of a moral busybody instinct, any of the adults that checked on Kevin or interacted with Kevin through the course of the movie could have very easily called Child Protective Services, and Kevin would have been removed from his fucking family. So, if for no other reason than that, Kevin has a self-preservation instinct to try and bluff people. So there's that. Like even in a slightly less than best case scenario, if this movie played itself more straight, Kevin is losing his family or his home because Child Protective Services and moral busybody instincts. Moving on.
All right,
Candy canes.
sec.
Is stuck in a job in which he needs to serve the more fortunate, and Kevin's reaction to this is to treat him like garbage. You did nothing to deserve this, pizza delivery driver. You are a working class hero. Anyway, Kevin's never seen Uncle is so rich that he can fly them all to Paris. 14 of them. At Christmas. That must cost a small fortune.
It's also the
know
90s.
I know he's joking about the whole working class hero thing in like a dry humor snark kind of way, but how far is like I think Leon is intending that joke as a funny because it's true type joke. So yeah, how thoroughly has classism dined on your brain, Leon, that is even a thought in your head? And Kevin doesn't pull one over on him because the pause ... He pulls one over on him because he's a kid and he doesn't really know how the adult world works on some level. Again, this movie operates variously on cartoon logic and child logic for the most part. And if it didn't, this would be a much darker movie, as we've already alluded to. Candy canes.
Hold on.
Then in Home Alone 2, in case you thought only Kevin's never seen uncle is rich, Kevin's father flies the whole clan to Florida. I'm sorry, but who takes a tropical vacation for Christmas? Bougie, suburban white people. That's who. I won't get into the ethics of whether it's okay to steal from the rich, although obviously I think it's fine. Obviously.
Go fuck yourself, man.
Small quibble here, Leon, but the dude has like 13 kids. He would have to be bougie as shit just to support that many family members. Unless, I suppose the older children might have jobs and shit and might contribute to the household and whatnot, but in the 90s, when one has 13 kids, one ought to have at least like 6 or 7 figures in the bank account, or one is simply not able to support that many fucking kids. In suburbs of Chicago and so on. Like, do you want the McAllisters to live in squalor for the sake of your classist conscience? Or is it acceptable that Kevin's father tries to keep himself and his children in relative comfort while also realizing that they have to deal with each other and himself all that time? Because you could, in theory, have a poor person with that many kids, but again, this movie would be very, very dark if it was following the Oliver Twist orphanage in poverty route. Do you see? Kind of would sacrifice the optimistic and glitzy tone of the movie and most of its Christmas imagery if that were the case. Candy canes.
He probably does wish they'd live in squalor. Maybe make the bandits instead repo men or cops or something.
You know, I could see a like Antifa rewritten version of Home Alone with that being the case.
Well,
but
the character wouldn't be that smart to build all the traps that Kevin does. So,
well, that's the thing. Kevin is a child and doesn't have any physical advantages or like security systems and shit. What he does have is a like Youth Mensa level gift with civil engineering that would give MacGyver a run for his money. So he leverages that gift of his intelligence over Harry and Marv, who it must be said are probably about 10 points above Forrest Gump IQ-wise between them. So there's that. And good for Kevin for being self-reliant enough and intelligent enough to realize, I'm a child who has to fight 2 adults. I need to leverage my intelligence over them if I can.
Candy canes.
Candy canes.
Obviously, that's what I'm advocating. So, Kessel Doctrine states that in order to protect yourself from bodily harm or death, you have the right to inflict bodily harm or death on anyone who trespasses on your property. It almost makes sense, except for all the ways that it can be exploited. Let's use Home Alone as an example. Kevin devises...
Kevin is not exploiting shit in this case, other than his aforesaid Youth Mensa level gift with civic engineering, which he needs to, because otherwise he is a defenseless child. He is simply trying to survive, because again, before they come in and trigger all those traps that Kevin has, unbeknownst to them, set up, Harry is mocking him and threatening him through the door by saying, "We know you're in there, pal, and we know you're all alone." And if nothing else, that does actually qualify as malicious intent. Because what did you think was going to happen to Kevin in the event that he was unarmed in the way most other kids would have been? Because again, even if he's a good little anarcho-communist and actually tries to help them rob his own family, they're probably still going to go, "No witnesses, please face the wall, click, click." Or we need to tie him up or beat him or whatever the hell else to make sure he doesn't call the cops on us as soon as we leave. One way or the other, something bad has to happen to Kevin in this situation because they know he is there, they know he is alone, and they want the shit that his family has. So if the vacation went on as intended, they could have gone in, taken nothing but property, and done no major destruction other than the flooding. But we don't live in that world. We live in the world where Kevin is a child and he is home alone, and they know he is alone. And most criminals at least have the common sense to go, "No witnesses." So what's going to happen to Kevin, assuming that we, play this somewhat realistically for 5 seconds? If he doesn't defend himself with a aforesaid gift for civil engineering. Candy canes.
Yep. All right. Candy canes.
Is a series of traps to protect himself from the wet bandits. But here's the thing. Kevin doesn't need to do any of this to protect himself. This is not a situation in which Kevin is sleeping in his bed, hears a strange sound coming from the kitchen, grabs a weapon just to be safe, sees an intruder, and then it all goes sideways. No. Kevin knows the wet bandits are coming.
Yes, and he doesn't know anything else about them. Like I was saying earlier, suppose that instead of Harry, the Joe Pesci character, being the main brains of the operation in this movie, it was Tommy from Goodfellas, who was also a Joe Pesci character. That's why I like the parallel. If Tommy from Goodfellas showed up instead of Harry in this movie, then again, Kevin is going to wind up either severely injured or dead, or possibly kidnapped. And Kevin only knows that these are two thieves who are trying to abscond with him and his family's possessions, and that they are likely to be dangerous. So, does he A, behave like a good little anarcho-communist in the hopes that they uncharacteristically leave him the fuck alone and thereby leave a witness who will probably call the cops on them after they leave alive? Or is it smart for him to plan for what they could hypothetically do rather than what he hopes they will do out of the goodness of their hearts? Because if, for example, Joseph Tarasov from the first John Wick and his cronies showed up in this movie rather than Harry and Marv, the group of people who self-evidently were willing to murder a puppy for no other reason than it had a problem when they beat the shit out of its master, again, things don't look well for the 11-year-old who is by himself. So, does he plan for the good little anarcho-communist revolution? Or does he plan for, these are probably dangerous criminals, I should proceed accordingly? Moving on. Candy cane.
Candy canes.
He even knows when the wet bandits are coming. He overhears them plotting. Shortly before the big slapstick portion of the movie, Kevin goes to church. He's safe there. In fact, he's safe anywhere besides his home. He could have remained at the church, completely safe, and if he so desired, he could have contacted the pit.
Okay, on some level, this is just, you selectively forgetting about this thing called narrative catharsis. He has to do something about it and can't do the various slightly more sensible versions of this because that would make for a very shitty movie. The most potentially cathartic thing you could change about this movie that would make it make more sense is if, after having his heart-to-heart with old man Snow Shovel Neighbor there, he invites him over and goes over to his house with him so that he can watch him until his parents get back and so on. That could have hypothetically happened and would have made some kind of sense given the bond that they establish in the first movie. But that wouldn't abide by the Looney Tunes logic that this movie has, up until that point, abided by. So, based on the rules of narrative catharsis and shit, Kevin has to do something to defend himself because he's been shown to be a clever little shit throughout the course of this movie, and also highly prone to self-reliance. So it makes sense for his character to try and defend his house. In fact, I think he even says that to himself as he's making all the plans and shit. This is my home, I have to defend it. That makes sense in character.
Giant Turtle, he's explicitly not safe anywhere but the church. He almost got caught while buying stuff.
Yeah, and again, you could maybe, and I'm being overly charitable here, make the argument that after he knows that old man Snow Shovel Neighbor is okay, he could have maybe asked him to keep an eye on him for the next few days until his parents get back. But that wouldn't be a particularly narratively cathartic way of handling the plot. Other than maybe in the sense that Kevin goes from fearing Snow Shovel Neighbor Dude because of Buzz's, horror stories bullshit, to realizing that he's a good guy after all and trusting him. And there's no reason he couldn't have done that and the trap thing. In fact,
no, they did that in the movie.
Right, but I don't think that old man Snow Shovel Neighbor stayed with Kevin until his family got back or anything.
No, but he got to know him.
Right, he saved him he saved him when they were about to pull a gun on him. I know.
That's not what I'm talking about. In the church, they had a civil discussion.
No, I know, but that's specifically what I'm referring to. It would make sense in another version of this movie if after that heart-to-heart, the Snow Shovel Neighbor called his parents and was like, "Don't worry about Kevin, I'm keeping an eye on him," or something. Or if we want to keep the slapstick ending, we could have had a scene where he and Snow Shovel Neighbor are setting up the traps together. You could have hypothetically done that and it wouldn't have violated the narrative catharsis of the movie. But at least what Leon is suggesting of Kevin doesn't need to do any of that would break the rules of narrative catharsis. Because it wouldn't show Kevin's self-reliance and cleverness coming into fruition and defending him. So the Snow Shovel Neighbor has to be confined to that subplot, at least in the version of the movie we have.
All right. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Remained at the church, completely safe, and if he so desired, he could have contacted the pigs to catch the wet bandits in the act. He's a white suburbanite. That's literally all they do. Now, if he's worried about being fingered for the toothbrush crime, he doesn't have to meet with the authorities, only call them. That's what Duty to Retreat is all about.
Jesus Christ, you are that motherfucker sounds so bitter.
Yeah, the pigs comment. This is how I this is how I am justified in fingering you with all the Antifa bullshit. But even as far as I can be bothered doing your job for you, Leon, the more sensible thing even in the context of the movie, is after he and Snow Shovel Neighbor get acquainted, because I don't remember the guy's name, he could have told him what happened, but that then leaves Kevin's self-reliance and cleverness kind of, if not unexplored, sort of mitigated somewhat. Now, you could have resolved this, like I said, by having Snow Shovel Neighbor and Kevin setting up the traps together, and that would have actually made things a little bit more plausible, because then it's not Kevin doing it alone. But then again, Home Alone is literally the name of the movie, so perhaps we should exploit that as part of the premise. But the most argument you can make, perhaps, Leon, is not making a full effective use of Snow Shovel Neighbor. But that's about the extent to which your criticism here makes any sense at all, and wouldn't completely break the narrative flow of the movie. If Kevin just peacefully, called the cops at the end, one, how do we know they would even take him seriously? Because remember, he is a fucking child. And two, that is one blue ball of a movie ending. If he, doesn't do anything to defend himself, or doesn't exploit his already established self-reliance and cleverness to his advantage. So either you keep the catharsis of the movie and take full advantage of Kevin's character, or you nerf the narrative catharsis of the movie and basically make Kevin's character a complete non-entity, or a complete false start. Which I don't think that version of Home Alone would have become a holiday classic. Do you? One in which he just remembers, oh hey, I can call the police, or even one in which Snow Shovel Neighbor plays a larger role in the plot. Now, mind you, how I would have handled this is Kevin would have made full use of his newly formed connection with the Snow Shovel Neighbor dude by having him help set up the traps, but there's very little difference in the end between that and the way the movie actually plays out, other than it would give Snow Shovel Neighbor slightly more of a complete arc of his own. Anyway, when Brainstormer gets back, we may continue. Yeah, Leon, to your point, Dragon Turtle, about duty of retreat kind of slipping the burden of proof, or the burden of conduct onto the victim. Leon, for classism reasons, seems to be rather on board with the idea that we should be more charitable towards perpetrators of crimes than we are to victims thereof, if those people happen to be bougie or philosophically opposed to him at all. Brainstormer, your mic appears to have crashed. We are getting nothing but static, dude. Still getting only buzzing. I will try to disconnect and reconnect and see if it's on my end. Yes, it is very much like the bees. Okay, so I am not the only one getting serenaded
now?
by buzz noises. You're a little bit better. No.
Okay, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Okay, you're back. You're back now. It's fine.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, you're okay.
I don't know what that buzzing was then.
I think your mic was just having a seizure or something.
But you got me the mic, so I have to blame you then.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I had to disappear real quick. Alright. Candy canes.
Candy canes.
The Wet Bandits pose no physical threat to Kevin because he's in the church. The Wet Bandits aren't going to the church. They don't even know he's there. They're going to the McAllister house. In a duty to retreat state, that is what you're expected to do. If you don't have to kill someone, then you shouldn't kill someone. If you're not in mortal danger.
Okay, well, how about not be a little bitch then?
Well, also, he is a child. And as I recall, Harry actually does, although playfully, imply something nasty is about to happen to Kevin before they go in. Because he does the, we know you're in there, pal, and that you're all alone thing. If I were an 11-year-old child alone for the first time, and some people I knew for full fact were thieves came to my door saying that, visions of no witnesses would start dancing in my head. If you know what I mean. Because, again, we, the audience, know that the Wet Bandits are mostly idiotic and harmless. Kevin, in universe, has no mechanism with which to determine that. He finds it out later when he plays them like a fucking fiddle. But prior to the third act, Kevin has no mechanism to determine that the Wet Bandits are not about to go full Yosef Tarasov on his ass. Or at the very least, that he's not going to wind up tied up in a chair naked or some shit. Saying nothing else of what could also befall Kevin in relation to that. But anyway, moving on.
Drantro, to be fair to the Wet Bandits, he could have been doing that to scare him. Doesn't mean it's not reasonable and understandable for Kevin to think otherwise, though. Dragon Turtle.
Well, yeah, and if your opening gambit when talking to an already scared child is to try and scare him worse, that strikes me as a that's your problem, dude. You went ahead and made a already bad situation 1,000 times worse by scaring someone who was already properly pretty scared.
Oh, and now he finds out the Wet Bandits would absolutely kill him, or at least now they would after all that.
Well, I'm more sympathetic to them at the end of the third act because several of those traps in a more realistic setting would have been lethal. So, he does basically torture them, but he is justified in a disproportionate response because he is a child and they are two adults who mean him some kind of harm. But yeah, I'm more sympathetic to them after the torture traps because, yeah, I would want to kill the kid too after he burned my scalp half to shit and electrocuted me and everything the fuck else. But even if Kevin had been a good little anarcho-communist, they still probably would have gone, "Thanks for all the help, pal, but no witnesses." Bang bang.
Anyway,
Candy cane.
feel like a little less than a minute left to the halfway point.
Yep. And I think this is that's when he starts talking about Home Alone 2 as well, so that's actually a nice cutoff.
Any games?
Candy canes.
Then you can't kill someone. The idea that Kevin is acting in self-defense, protecting himself from bodily harm, goes out the window since he's aware that the bandits are coming and chooses to run back to his home to inflict potentially lethal harm on them. Kevin could have easily avoided any potential danger to himself, but chose not to.
No, in fact he could not, because even if he had behaved like a good little anarcho-communist and helped the wet bandits out of class solidarity TM, they still likely would have gone, "Well, sure, he was nice to us while we were here, but he could just as easily call the cops after we leave. So, no witnesses. Bang, bang." And again, I'm willing to be charitable to them in the sense that they wanted to do burglary rather than robbery, but given that they weren't all on vacation as they originally thought, and there is a kid there who could very easily implicate them, the straightforward, common sense, criminal, thing to do is no witnesses, bang bang. So even if Kevin had been a good little anarcho-communist and helped them out of class solidarity or whatever the fuck we on, or even if he avoided the house entirely and just let them take all that shit, that either makes Kevin an immoral person for not trying to defend his family's possessions, or it makes him a incredibly gullible little shit who is going to get one-shotted at the end, no matter how hopeful he chooses to be. Moving on. Candy cans.
He's not protecting himself. He's protecting his stuff. His Christmas presents, his rich family's silverware, etc. Now you might be thinking that Kevin has a right to protect said property. I don't know, maybe, but he could have just as easily protected his family's property by contacting the authorities.
Well, then, more than likely, if the cops showed up. Wait, did he ever call the cops earlier?
Yeah, he called the cops right before he went into the treehouse, so that they would be there to pick up.
I mean early. No, I don't mean. No, I mean earlier in the movie.
No, his mom called the cops so that they would go and double check and see if Kevin was okay. Kevin didn't realize this though and hid, but he never called them prior to the scene right before he goes to the treehouse where he calls them so that the wet bandits can be apprehended.
Well, I was gonna say if he had called them earlier, they called them a lot earlier, the wet bands might have been tipped off and not they couldn't be charged,
Yeah. If he had said that and then they didn't show up or they got wise somehow, then he looks like a malicious little Bart Simpson prank caller. And there's also the chance that they might not have believed him anyway, because he may very well have been a Bart Simpson style prank caller. He only got them to show up in the third act by pretending to be his dad, I think. Which one wonders how in the fuck no one saw through that, but details.
Anyway,
One also wonders why none of the people that his mom called to go and check on him, caught wise to that, and it's like, oh, he must be there after all. But, Candy canes.
we're at 10 minutes already.
next week.
And speaking of which, we are going to end it there because it is getting kind of late and I am very tired for some reason.
Yep.
I don't know why, but I am. So with that, folks, I want to say Avidaze, aloha. Fuck, I fucked that up. I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidaze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and a holly jolly Yuletide fuck off to all of you.